Grampian Nation, here we are again, getting ready to chat with a champion. But have you ever been on the sideline of a kid's football game and somebody looks out of line? Well, sometimes it's the coach, sometimes it's the parent, sometimes it's the kid, sometimes it's the ref, sometimes it's all or none of the above. We're going to have a chat with someone who knows the ins and out. His name is Darren Ault. Hang on.
In 2013, I coined the name Grampian, and I gave it to your host, Jim Tracy.
Darren Ault, author of Out of Bounds. Welcome to the Grampian. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Jim. How are you today?
I am wonderful. I'm wonderful. I am fascinated by the book. As I mentioned to you before when we were chatting, I just had a firsthand witness of some of the things that you cover in the book. The book is called Out of Bounds. What caused you to write this book?
Well, I have a 33-year coaching career that I was deeply involved in, very passionate about, much to the chagrin of my wife sometimes, accusing me of being married to that, which I could totally understand why. There's anybody who's involved in youth athletics in particular, there's a tremendous amount of sacrifice and time away from family that goes into it. But so I'm in that career. I'm probably about 20 or so years deep in it. And I started to recognize just more and more of this pattern of hyper aggressive behavior from parents, not all parents, but those that are in that mode seem to make a lot of noise and create a lot of chaos. And I just started to think, well, why is this happening?
Yeah.
And so I kind of came up with this idea of the book through as a follow up to a phone call I had with one of those parents who was a father who was a friend and who I had coached AAU with for a while for one of his daughters. Ended up coaching both of his daughters in high school. And with the oldest daughter, he was just getting feisty about, how come I'm taking her playing time away from somebody else or giving her job away, et cetera, et cetera. And we had a good friendly conversation for a while, but it just turned at some point. And at one point I said to him, you're out of bounds on this one. And, that kind of foreshadowed into this book.
So, what I'm hearing is that this is based on real life events that happened that you experienced firsthand, and then came the thing. You can actually impact people's lives by writing this book. Is that accurate?
Yeah. And that's my hope, really. Yes, this is my story told through the lens of basketball or a coach of basketball. It applies, in my opinion, to any youth sports, any kind of youth engagement, where there is an authority outside of the parent of that youth, a coach, a teacher, etc. And I do believe I wanted to share my story so that it kind of helps shed some light on what the circumstances may look like, if anything, or at minimum, to offer kind of an off-ramp for people if they feel themselves getting tied into this. Well, hang on a second. Let me back out. Let me see what the real intention of everybody involved is and try to manage a more peaceful ending to any of those kind of circumstances. I
Yeah,
do
because on a
believe that.
sideline, I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry. No, I do believe that these stories transcend not just beyond sports too.
Sure. And if you look at the sideline coach, I'm going to call you coach because now it feels like it's natural.
Thanks.
But but there is a surplus of emotion. There is a surplus of complexity because now, the parent's usually the boss, but the kid wants to be the boss, and the coach is the boss, and the ref is the real boss, et cetera, et cetera. This is a complex, volatile situation where people are introducing new levels of emotion into it.
Yeah, it's a great observation, Jim, and especially as you start to move through the ranks of youth sports, right? If when you start out at a rec league where everybody's just kind of out there bumping into each other, learning the game, the officials in basketball are letting travels and things like that go, and they're using those moments as coaching moments on the court, and as you start to move up to seventh and eighth grade basketball, to high school basketball, to college basketball, all of a sudden there's this weeding out process, naturally and through merit of kids that haven't developed the way they should or want to for a sport in order to progress to higher ranks. And I think a lot of that kind of creates this angst amongst parents who are used to seeing Jimmy or Johnny or Susie or whoever play equally because that's the way it starts. Let's just get them out there. Let's let them bump into each other and find out how it goes. But like in a lot of other things in life, the more you move up, the more competitive it gets, the more emotional it gets, and the more intense it gets.
Well, and the more you have to put into it, and P, I don't know that people realize that Johnny or Susie or whoever
Yeah.
was gonna be able to be that, once in a generation natural athlete that didn't have to work at it. But um, this is more than a sports story. This is a cautionary tale about power, about politics, and the high cost of silence.
Yeah, I tried to weave in a couple different aspects, and even a lot of the good ones that I experienced. But there, to your point, power, politics locally, where mothers or fathers that sit on athletic boards try to then determine how certain athletic programs are going to be run, most often to fit their son or daughter's opportunity within that program. And challenging coaches around that. Uh, Parents, I've seen parents who are a father in particular who's a referee in a high school league sit on the sideline of his daughter's game at the high school level and coach his daughters. Well, the coach is on the other side, and the
Oh
girls will
my.
look at him for direction. And what really starts to happen there is you lose sight of team, right?
Yeah.
Because the coach has the 360-degree view of what the team is trying to do, what the team goals are, and where each individual uh, weaves into that fabric. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, when you're a parent in the stand and you start to coach your child, you could be unintentionally or intentionally countering what that coach is trying to achieve, what that team
Yeah.
is trying to achieve.
Well, and it's often said that good intentions don't buy a lot.
Mhm.
um, and as I look at this and I break it down, the parents always have the best of intentions for their kids. I don't want to second guess that, but they don't get a really good look at teams. So let's break this down. I love breaking stuff down. There's your sports analogy from me. Um, but let's break it down and look at, for starters, the kids, because I think this is the most important element.
Mhm.
And we're not training people to be great athletes. We should be training kids to be great teammates.
And great people.
Accurate?
Amen. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Very accurate. And I think that's often lost in the wash of what has become a very me centric society or culture, in particular in sports, where everybody's trying to advance for the best of themselves, to reach those levels of where they're getting scholarships or other things that come with that kind of advancement.
Yeah.
And in the high school days, when I coached high school girls for 22 years. A lot of times kids were doing things and parents were encouraging them to do things that would get them in the local paper or on the online or do some self promotion. And
Hmm.
again, I get the intention, and I'm not saying it's a dishonest or an unworthy attention or intention, but again, you're putting that person, your child, above what
Yeah.
the rest of the team is trying to do, and it can also often be counterintuitive to what that team is trying to do. When mom yells from the stand, shoot, and there may be the coach might be trying to control clock a little bit because of a game situation. Now your daughter's torn between, do I shoot or do I listen to coach?
Am I supposed to obey my mom or am I supposed to do what the coach told me to? Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy. So, how much extra pressure does this place on what I'm going to call the student athlete? Because when you get up into college, having a grandson that's going to play college football, I'm
Mm,
like, I want him to be a student athlete, not an athlete student. But even through that college experience, there's a tremendous amount of pressure on those young men in this case to perform and to practice and to get up early and to stay up late and to know the playbook and to lift more than anybody else, and it's incredibly competitive. But now you take that to a junior high level.
mm.
How much pressure are we putting on these kids?
Well, first of all, congratulations to you said it was your grandson or
My
son?
grandson, yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
playing college sports, because that's a rare number, right? When you start to parse it all out, it's a rare percentage that actually get to that level. So congratulations. But
Yeah.
all the things that you talked about, the discipline, the structure, the attitude around team, every one of those elements that will be driven to your grandson's heart and soul of him being a part of that team are aspects or attributes and tools that any child who plays sports can take with them further. And I think that's the
Yeah.
greatest gift, right?
Yeah.
Um, so to your question around height, that pressure sinking down to high school level, It absolutely does, and more is put on the children,
Mhm.
or the student athletes, to go out and achieve to that success point that your grandson did, to be a
Mm.
scholarship athlete, which is it's a small percentage. And if you
Yeah.
pile on top of that, take that scholarship athlete because I want you to become a professional athlete, that percentage gets even smaller and smaller. And I've
Yeah.
talked about a few times where for men in basketball, that's 1.3% that go on to play the pros. For women in basketball, it's less than 1%.
Yeah.
So now you've got these kids that are out there just, hours and hours of training, putting in the time and effort around practice into and the discipline of their sport. Again, with the motive, I'm going to promote myself in order to get a scholarship. And that's
Yeah.
pressure. It's pressure on kids who may not even be ready for it mentally or physically in that given sport.
Sure. And they're not really, especially at the junior high and high school level, they're not built to carry that pressure onto the court, onto the field, onto the mat, whatever their chosen endeavor is. They're built to, you know, worry about growing up into a decent human being. That's what they should be worried about anyway.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, listen, sports is fun. When you boil it down and you go out and play, even at my age, you're going out and trying to continue to play. It may not feel as good while you're playing, but it's fun. And especially in youth sports, it is intended to be a fun way for kids to grow and to develop as athletes, as people, as teammates, all those attributes. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of times, just the way things have shaped up in youth sports, the fun aspect of it is getting lost, and it's being
Yeah.
replaced by this high stress, high pressure environment.
And that pressure to win, at that, and it is, and it really stems from a pressure to win as well,
Mm.
because you don't see a lot of superstars coming off of losing teams, and it's just a fact. Um, and everybody wants to be a superstar. So if that's the case, then there's pressure to win. And how does that affect a coach at
Yeah,
these
I mean,
levels?
a lot of it depends on the level and the program you're in, but there's definitely, I coached in the Jersey Shore Conference, which is the best basketball conference in basketball for the state of New Jersey. So the
Hmm.
competition is on, but there are definitely marquee programs, and there are kind of, middle of the road to that marquee level. Then there's an awful lot who just don't have either the enrollment or the interest in that particular sport to field a great team. So, but having said all that, there's opportunity for everybody because you
Yeah.
had mentioned the winning aspect of it, and yes, when I coached to win, certainly, in the way I taught the kids how to play the game, and I take that same sentiment into my role as a regional vice president for a sales team now. Is don't focus on the results, focus more on the behaviors that drive the result.
Yeah.
You
There you
know,
go.
and in basketball, practice the right way, practice the execution of the game. The wins and losses will take care of themselves in that category. If you're doing those correct behaviors.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there can be an intention or intensity around winning, but there doesn't have to be, and a lot of that does have to do with the coach and the culture that he or she is trying to create, and
Hmm.
a great deal of it has to do with the parents and the way they support that. If they're at the
Yeah.
kitchen table saying, you guys stunk, you lost your third game in a row, and they're not paying attention to the progress and the process that the coach is putting into that program, it can create an
Yeah.
automatic conflict.
Yeah. So you wrote this about the book, and again, folks, it's Out of Bounds. You can find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever you get your books. But Out of Bounds, you wrote, is kind of a response to I'm going to say a maybe disgruntled former team member
Mhm.
and parent who had some ambitions that may have been elevated.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that was really the straw that I won't say broke the camel's back, but definitely gave me the motivation to finish this concept of the idea of out of bounds. I was in my fourth year of coaching at Holmdel High School. We had just created a program through the 3 years prior that we now had some, Division One, Division Two, three players on the roster. This was the seniors that had grown up with me in the program, and we were putting it all together, and we were right on the precipice of from some successes the year before of breaking into the New Jersey State top 20 and these fun things, the kind of things that
Yeah.
show that progress that you've created or the team has created, put the school on the map, give you a little bit of buzz, and in the greater scheme of things, draw some college eyes, coaches' eyes to the program, or make them pay a little bit more attention to them. And we were there. We were right there, and it was about nine games into the season, and we had just played the third ranked team in the Shore Conference and ninth in the state, Red Bank Catholic, which is a phenomenal perennial powerhouse type program.
Sure.
We had beaten them the year before for the first time ever, which was kind of cool. But that whole roster came back a year later, and they had a D1 going to Tennessee. They had a D1 going to Boston College, I think. One was 6'5", one was 6'2", and they were mad, right? So we were playing through that, and we ended up getting close again. We lost by 9. But what was really neat for me as a coach was this was the moment where I could see now the chemistry of all the parts coming together and some of the new wrinkles that we were putting in, during the summer and prior to the season. And they just started to click. I was like, okay, we're here. And at the end of the locker room conversation, I told the girls, when we beat Ewing, which was the next state ranked team we were going to play on the following Saturday, I said, we will break into the top 20. Unfortunately, little did I know that was going to be my last words to the girls, because there was a freshman who was on JV who felt she should be on varsity. Parents felt like she should be on varsity, but she just wasn't ready. She was saddled a little bit with some injuries that she carried from the summer to the fall, and kind of hampered some of her early physical development, and a little slow foot, not quite catching up on some of the things that we were trying to do on both sides of the ball. And she saw some of her peers a couple other freshmen who were starting to get some time because they were ready. And they were also in different roles, right? Different positions. Yeah. But it's all like, hey, if they're there, I should be there kind of thing. And they levied a very false, very negative, very harmful accusation against me that didn't even involve the young lady. It involved, according to her, 2 other kids, both of which parents adamantly argued on my side that, hey, that is absolute BS, for lack of a better term, and we want coach back, right? So, but the Board of Education was paralyzed by their own methodology, their own lack of desire to lead and guide and take this by the horns. And at the end of the day, I ended up being suspended for 40 days through the end of the season, even though I had all the other parents and all the other players, beckoning them to have me come back. And that was really it. I mean, it was just, for me, it was eye-opening that somebody, a parent, set of parents and a child, or parents using their child, would go to the depths of this kind of evil to remove what they see as an obstacle, instead of digging in with the coach and how do we develop, how do we get better?
So one of the things I love about your book is you try to take this in a positive direction. You're actually trying to coach the participants now. Now we're going to give some coaching advice from Coach to let's start with players. You got a kid who's a freshman, and they have some obvious talent, and you want to help them develop. And you get a chance to sit down for 2 sentences with them. What are you going to tell them?
First things first, there's a big difference between deserve and earn.
Yeah.
They will have the opportunity in every one of my practices to earn playing time, to earn starting time, to earn positions on the floor and rotation. So just go out and do it. And if you're concerned about, hey, I don't seem to be picking it up, or I don't seem to be advancing the same way others are, then just have a conversation with your coach. What is it I need to do to get better? What skill sets can I work on, to improve? Where do you see me fitting into the team rotation? Those kind of things, right? Yeah. And being patient. Be patient with the time and the process. There's not a lot of programs that freshmen play varsity. Yeah. I happened to be in a smaller school that had a smaller roster size. So at times I needed them to play varsity.
Oh, yeah. For sure. So as a graduate of the U.S. Military Naval Academy, what would you say to them about discipline? What did you learn at the Naval Academy that would transfer to their life as a freshman basketball player, hooper?
That's a great question. And boy, discipline was certainly instilled in me from the ripe old age of 17. And I actually, I'm a big fan of Jocko Willink, and there's 2 things that he touts that I think apply to that concept, right? And there's 3 of them, actually. Number 1 is the extreme ownership piece. Like, you have to own your commitment, your desire, what you express, and the effort you put forth.
Yeah.
Relative to sport, right? And true with academics and anything you do in life. So that extreme ownership piece, taking accountability for you and your actions, and your words and your deeds, right?
Hmm.
Um, he's got a phrase that says discipline equals freedom. And
Yeah.
I just think that's so powerful, right? If I want to get better at running the mile, then my discipline to, doing the steps that get me to that point where I can achieve that goal frees me up, makes me feel better. If I'm 25 pounds overweight and I have the discipline to address that, then that's going to make me free of the aches and pains that come with being 25 pounds overweight,
Yeah.
you know? And the last one is really choose your hard,
Yeah.
which and it all centers around discipline. It's
For
about
sure.
recognizing what it is that's a challenge to you or difficult to you. And for me, as a kid growing up in basketball, my left hand was horrible. And back in the day when I played, it was like, okay, they didn't really emphasize that being lefty righty, being able to do both. And it was just like, okay, you only got a right, we're going to put you on the right side of the floor. Right. And
Yeah.
that was the end of your
And you'll
development.
never be a crossover dribbler.
Correct. Put him on the block, let him do his thing. But today I would encourage my kids to take that challenge on, own it. If you
Yeah.
if you want to be better at basketball, then and you know that there's a weakness, whatever it is, in this case, the left hand, spend time before and after practice, and I will commit time with you to the
Yeah.
discipline of building that left hand to the point where you may never be, a great lefty, but you'll certainly be ambidextrous to the point where you can be a double threat, where you can't be predictable in how I guard you.
Yeah. One of the things that was really relevant to me, I trained dogs for quite a while,
Hmm.
and I asked the fellow who I was working with as a trainer. I said, I just need to know the difference between a um, amateur field champion and a national field champion. And he said 10,000 repetitions.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I think the same thing is true about dribbling with your left hand. It might be a little more than 10,000, but
Yeah, I mean, there's two pieces to that, and I'm sure it's the same for dogs too, or any kind of training that you do. I used to talk about practice makes perfect, and then I had an assistant coach who happens to be my brother-in-law who said at one point he said, "It's not practice makes perfect; it's perfect practice makes perfect."
yeah,
So that commitment to, even though you're not in a game situation, doing things right in order to improve. And then I eventually evolved that to a point where he was no longer in the picture, and I'm the head coach of girls now instead of boys. Um, was push yourself to fail.
yeah.
When we're in practice mode and we're doing these drills and you're trying to develop a left hand, don't just sit there and be stationary and dribble as soft and gently as you can. Push it. Drive to
Yeah.
the point where you kick that ball across the floor, or you have to pick it up and start over, whatever it is. And don't get frustrated by it. Get determined to get better.
I'm so glad you brought that up. What my kids had a swim coach who was just an amazing coach, and they would say that practice makes permanent.
Mm,
Perfect
yeah.
practice makes perfect.
Yeah. See, another iteration. That's a good one.
There you go. There
Yeah.
you go. So now we're going to move from the student athlete, to the parent.
Mm.
Give parents who are struggling, and this is a tension-filled environment. Give them some counsel on how to be the best parent of a student athlete.
I think it starts with perspective. I think if you look at 99% of the coaches, 99% of the teachers, the authority figures that are involved in your child's life are trying to do the right thing by your kid, are trying to help them develop in whatever it is, whether it's Spanish 101 or basketball or football or anything
Sure.
in between. I think the coach's intention, and I can certainly, speaking for myself, say that was 100% the intention, was to take these young men and women that I had the fortune to coach and help them become not only better basketball players, but better people,
Mm,
and better people as individuals, but most definitely within the context of a team and a team structure,
yeah.
because I just think those things, again, transcend every walk, every aspect of life. So trust, number one. And if you don't have that trust, I mean, one of the biggest pillars to trust is communication.
Yeah.
Then communicate, talk with the coach, try to understand with the coach what their expectations are. And, I would often, before every year, have a meeting with the parents, with their kids in the same seats. They would oftentimes sit apart from each other intentionally, I think. But so that the kids could hear what my dialogue with the parents was around expectations, my expectations from them in terms of getting their kids to practice early, picking them up, not coming into practice, because
Yeah.
they become a distraction, especially if there's two who then start to talk and have their own dialogue around the coaching part.
Yeah.
Um, and then coming and supporting at games, being supportive, lay off the refs, that kind of stuff. So there was an expectation set, and then I, would ask them, well, what is it that they're looking for from their coach, and so you're communicating through and level setting that expectation.
Yeah.
And then I think the last piece is just realizing, and it goes along with the trust too, is just the commitment that, again, most coaches are making. The personal commitment, the sacrifice that is being made in order to help your child have the experience and the opportunity to be a part of a team, to be a part of this school function, right? To have fun, to make friends, to learn how to build a relationship with other players, and some of those relationships are ironclad things that last lifetimes, and
Yeah.
and also the understanding of the downs, the ups and downs. Not everybody gets to win. Not everybody gets to win a championship. Not everybody gets to have a winning season. But there are a lot of great lessons that can be learned throughout that whole opportunity, throughout that whole season, with the losses, with the failures, with the letdowns. And when that's happening, again, trust and communicate.
Yeah, for sure. Now, parents then become teammates with the coach, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And the good ones do that very, very well. And
Yeah.
if there is a question, it's not a question around how come my kid didn't play or didn't get this or didn't score that. It's more around what can we do? What does my child need to focus on in order to be better? And oftentimes it naturally progresses into, hey, I'll come in 15, 20 minutes early to meet them, or I'll stay a little bit later after practice to help them with this individual skill set.
Awesome, coach. I'm going to give you a once in a lifetime opportunity for a coach. You get to now give a minute or two worth of advice to the refs
Oh boy.
with no feedback.
I never had problem giving advice to refs during the game. What are you
I
talking
can
about?
imagine.
um,
What good coach ever did.
yeah, yeah. No, my relationship with refs definitely evolved over the 33 years I was coaching. As a young man, very competitive, very driven towards
Yeah.
success. A lot of times, if I didn't see things going the way that I thought they should be, I would kind of take it out on the ref every now and then, earn my share of technical fouls. Um, but as I matured and grew, I realized, hey, they're doing a job too, right?
Yeah.
And it's not an easy job because they can't, they cannot even appease 50% of the people at all. I
Hmm.
mean, somebody's going to be griping at
Ever.
one point or another, right? So, but the ones who do it really, really well, and those are the ones I would had the opportunity to build stronger relationships with as a coach, but also try to see if I couldn't help younger refs emulate that same behavior.
Yeah.
Is again around the interactions with coaches. It's okay to talk to a coach, right?
Yeah.
It's okay to, if a coach is saying, hey, what they do wrong, the worst thing a ref can do is ignore that question. Because then
Yeah.
the coach is like, you're ignoring me?
Yeah. Then
And
he
now
turns
it's
into Sparky Anderson.
right. But if you come up at the moment you can kind of stop by, whether it's a stoppage or play or as you're running down the court, hey coach, they dragged their pivot foot. Oh, okay. Thank you. At least I know now I know how to kind of
Yeah.
coach my kid through something, right?
Sure.
Or even if I disagree with it, at least I got an answer and okay, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing for me with officials was player safety on the court.
Mm.
The moment I felt that something was like, girls were getting flipped to the ground or elbows were being thrown and the refs had no control over that, that's where my German and Irish would get the best of me.
Getting out of hand, right? It's
Yeah.
getting out of
Yeah.
hand.
Yeah.
Okay, now you've had an opportunity to witness and then turn this and translate this into something that effectively can help people with their team, with their
Mhm.
kid, with their coach, with their all of the above. Now you get to coach another coach, and you've got the benefit of a few decades worth of rearview mirror hindsight to pull from. What are you going to say to that new coach who's coming in and he's struggling with the kids and the parents and the intensity and the tension and all the new stuff that really didn't used to happen, when I was a kid.
Yeah, the communication piece comes right back to the forefront of this, and it's multi-level now,
Mm,
which is a lesson I learn more and more as I grow in business too. Right, you can't just manage your
yeah.
people; you have to manage up the chain of command as well. And
Yeah.
if you don't do that well, it can create all kinds of chaos,
Go
or
manage
vice
the
versa.
boss before you manage them.
Yeah, and a lot of times, you're so worried about your people that you forget that there are people that you have to report to, and missions that are
Yeah.
coming down to you that you then have to spell out to your people. So. But the same is true within the youth sports, right? You have to have a way of communicating and engaging your team. And the biggest revelation to me was when I moved from boys to girls, in particularly, was that boys you could kind of coach one way and in one voice for the most part.
Hmm.
If I said run through that wall, it was yes, coach. Do you want me to run back through it the other direction?
Yeah.
With girls, if I said run through that wall, I'd get a quizzical look, a lot of whys,
What kind of
and
idiot are you to tell
yeah,
me to run through a wall?
it doesn't make any sense. Or I may have one girl try it and one girl start crying and go in the other direction. So and this is true with leadership in general, is you got to be able to understand people for who they are and meet
Mm,
them where they are in terms of their
yeah.
personal development in sport, in terms of their desire to be, whatever the level of athlete they want to be. Understand where the motivating buttons are. Uh, for a long time, I softened my tone with the young ladies that I would coach, and then one day, one of the girls in high school says, "Coach, you need to yell at me." I'm like, "What?" But she just that was her. That was the way she got
Yeah.
fired up. So I would
Yeah.
find times and ways not to yell at her, but to just get more pumped up, to get more intense with her.
Encourage her strongly.
Yes, yeah, but not necessarily in front of the other, 15, 20 girls on the team, because it
Right.
just, so I'd maybe pull her aside, just get in her ear a little bit. And, you
Yeah.
have the opportunity to be the best player on the floor anytime we're in the gym, then get after it. Let me see that today,
Yeah.
and she reacted to that, but others
That's
wouldn't.
awesome.
So yeah, definitely meeting people where they are, understanding, communicating with your players. And then the same thing with parents, you're going to have different, everybody that you meet day in and day out brings a different set of baggage into whatever situation with them that you may not know anything about. You got
Yeah.
you have a single mom who's struggling to get their child back and forth to practice, or it's just so
Yeah.
busy that they can't. So you find a way to manage through that and communicate through that. You have the overbearing dad who wants to be at everything. And I was a coach too at one point, and yeah, but you're not the coach of your kid now. So let's find a happy medium there somewhere.
Yeah.
So
For
it's that
sure.
communication through that, trying to get them engaged where you can. Some coaches may want their parents at practice. I never did. I think I invited one or two parents when they were giving me a hard time about why wasn't their kid playing. And then I finally broke down and said, you know what, you come watch what I'm watching and you let me know what
Okay.
you think afterwards.
Sure. Sure.
And the one,
Come see it from my shoes.
yeah, and the last father I had do that, he left about half hour into practice and I never heard from him again. So, um, and then of
So,
course
what's one
there's,
of the great things that's happened after you wrote the book? That I mean, with every author, there's high points and low points and rewrites and edits, and I'm not going to go into that because
yeah,
it's painful.
yeah.
But there's some great things that happens after the fact. Can you give us a couple of those?
Yeah, a lot. There's been a lot of interesting things. First and foremost, I felt like there would be an immediate audience for this. Like my island, if you were, my network, and
Hmm.
there was. But
Yeah.
what was interesting is even within that island, the people who knew me the best and the closest, there was revelation for them that they weren't aware of. Like they may have known me as a high school coach, didn't know me when I was at the Naval Academy Prep School or
Yeah.
seventh and eighth grade grammar school boys. So that to learn of my journey and how it got me to one point was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I've had people that have had nothing to do, have never ever played a sport, don't know anything about basketball, who have read the book and have told me I couldn't put it down. I was right on the edge of my seat, felt like I was in the game, so
Nice.
to touch a reader like that, who doesn't bring any of the baggage into it or any of the history into it, was pretty powerful for me.
Yeah.
And then be able to be on podcasts like this, Jim, in all honesty, not just because I'm on the podcast, but
Yeah.
everybody I've spoken to on the podcast brings a little bit different perspective. And we dive into a different aspect of
Sure.
where, what this book represents and where it can be helpful to others who haven't read it yet, or, who are dealing with some of these circumstances where, specifically where parents are crossing that line in that player-coach relationship.
All right. Well, Grampian Nation, I want you guys to go online and check it out. The book is called Out of Bounds by Darren Ault. And Coach, before we let people go on this show, we talk about, because most of the people who've been here, like you, have lived a huge, kind of audacious life. And you had someone who championed you, someone who mentored you, someone who helped you through, and they did it in such a significant way that you got to just step up and give them props right now. Who would that be?
Ooh, there are so many people throughout my life. I mean, I mentioned single mothers. My mom was one for a while. So, raising 3 of us by herself. And she did a great job of getting us to where we needed to be, but not getting in the way of what we needed to do. So and she also was an eternal student. She was always looking to learn more. And so as I fast forward that into where I am today in my professional career, I'm blessed to work for a company where the leadership stresses the idea of be a learn-it-all, not a know-it-all. Yeah. And, a lot of times when you're out there talking to people, you take the posture, well, I know what I'm talking about. But if you just quiet down for a moment and listen, you can learn so much more and pick up on things.
Awesome.
So from mom to that leadership, and then there's a ton of people in between, the Navy, coaches, teachers. I mean, there's a long list, and I truly appreciate all of them.
All right. Well, what's mom's name?
Barbara. Unfortunately, she's looking down from heaven, so I don't know if she'll hear you, but go ahead.
All right. Well, Barbara, I want to thank you, and the whole Grampian Nation thanks you for helping build Darren Ault into the coach he is. Coach, thanks again for coming on the Grampian. Hey, all you folks out there, you keep dreaming those Grampian dreams. So this is Jim, and I am out. When you get an opportunity, subscribe or follow wherever you get your podcast.